Well, we have said that version 3.5 of Empire at War Expanded Thrawn's Revenge is going to be focusing on the Empire of the Hand primarily. We haven't said too much else about what to expect beyond that. One of the things that I have talked about a bit in the last 2 years, though, is the fact that one of the changes made in the Empire at War patches, so for the game itself, has given modders more control over the UI. So today, we're going to take a look at one of the first things we've done with that. Ever since that was announced, and even a bit before it, one of our coders, Phil, has spent a lot of time focusing on what you can do with different game windows. This is how we ended up with the pop-ups, taking advantage of the bounty hunter system for several of the choices in the most recent releases of the mod. However, with the greater control that we've been given by Petroglyph over the UI, we've been able to build this new Galactic Conquest selection menu, which might give you a bit of an idea of what we plan to do going forward with some of the other in-game content. So while there's no particular issue with the original Galactic Conquest selection, there are a lot of options in the mod that kind of get buried in submenus with that setup. And with this setup, along with us thinking it just looks cooler, you have things like era selection right on the first menu. This is still a bit work in progress, so this kind of central area is going to have a lot more text, and it's going to fit into the text boxes a lot better. But you can see you have the different categories of map types. So you have your historicals over here, your progressive maps, you have your regional maps, and then the infinities maps, so you have from the ground up, and the custom Galactic Conquest. So you select all of those like normal, but instead of being a drop down for the factions, you have the faction icons over here. We can potentially do some more with the tooltips to give information about the faction, as well as have some text boxes for the factions over here. But you can also see which maps are available as the faction you have selected. So we have in the progressives, we can go for basically anything with the Empire. But if we go for the Empire of the Hand, you can see we have Kamas Crisis available, since that's the only historical map that you can play as the Empire of the Hand. Or if you go to the progressives, you can see that they are in the full galaxy maps, but not the known galaxy maps. And you can also see when you have a selection done, which year starts are available for that faction in that map. So let's say we go to the historicals, we go to Kamas Crisis, you can see the factions that are available. So you have the Empire, the New Republic, and the Empire of the Hand, and you're only able to select those. But if you reset the map selection, and we go over to full galaxy, or to the progressives here, we have all of our selection options back, and you can kind of just go through all of them and see what the different combinations are. So on the prior map, you weren't really able to know which factions could do which maps. So for a new player especially, it was very difficult to find a setup that would actually work in many cases. You had to kind of know what you were looking for beforehand, whereas this gives you hopefully a better idea of what you can do with each faction ahead of time. And there's a lot more room for description in here, aside from, again, the fact that this text is work in progress, and it will fit in the box once we're done. This is the area that we're going to be putting probably the most work into, because we can have different types of text show up, or different text boxes show up, depending on the selection. So it really just comes down to how in-depth we want to get with that. But in particular, the biggest advantage here is the year start selection. So with the prior setup, it would typically be not super obvious that you can click on that extra button to change the starting year. And it gave more of an impression that the first available start date was always what you were supposed to do. And that can cut people off from seeing different types of content in the mod, like the different maps themselves, since every year start has a unique map. And there's other events and characters that you're far more likely to see if you start later than earlier. One other thing that I do quickly want to talk about while we're on this menu is the independent minor warlord factions. This is something that we announced on the 1st of April, but for some reason people never believe what we announced that day, even though it's always true. But with this faction, rather than turn every little Imperial group on the map into its own dedicated faction, I don't know why I said dedicated like that, but we have this kind of catch-all faction that lets you pick whichever of the minor warlords that are around the galaxy that you want. So we have 40 groups now, and you can see their icons here. This isn't where you select them, but by going through the menus with this faction selected, this is where you'll see which ones will be available once you are actually in the map. So typically, it's mostly for progressives. There are a few regionals or things that are currently classified as historicals that have them. But yeah, so you'll primarily be seeing these in the progressives or the regionals. But yeah, you can at least see which factions are going to be there, which groups are going to be there. And again, you don't pick them while you're in the map, or in the menu rather, but you can see what options are going to be there once you get into the game itself. But this is only a single example of the kinds of stuff we are able to do with the new UI control that we have. So in a lot of cases, you have to handle the government setup. So let's actually take a look at some of this. We're going to go into a known galaxy small map as the New Republic, and let's start in 6 ABY. So you can see that eliminated the choice of the Empire of the Hand based on the fact that we are in known galaxy small, and the CSA based on the start year we've chosen, because at this point the CSA is part of the Zinja's empire. And also I know that there are some small misalignments, like this text is off. I'm sure that's bothering some people, and this box is off. It's very finicky to adjust this stuff in Blender, but this is stuff that we are going to be looking at and cleaning up as we get closer to release. But let's go to Admiral difficulty, New Republic, known galaxy small, 6 ABY, start Galactic Conquest. I will also be making that button selection bigger, or smaller, not bigger. It's already big enough. All right, so here we are in the Galactic Conquest itself, and you can see there's been some other small art updates that I've been working on. So Phil's been doing the kind of back end for these menus, and I've been going through and doing some of the art for them, as well as redoing some of the art for other in-game buttons to hopefully make it align a bit more with the rest of the UI that we've got with the HUDs. But for most factions, and hopefully in the future for all factions, we have these government mechanics like the command staff for the New Republic, legitimacy for the Empire, and typically they all have to be communicated through the mission holocron here. So it can be, like, it's fairly effective for a lot, and we'll probably still use it for a good amount, but it's not the cleanest information. So let's roll over to the first week. But we have stuff like our fighter assignments here. We have this political build tab, which has all the research options, any story progression, buildables you have, and also your command bar filters. So it's effective, it gets the job done, but there are a lot of things we can now move from the command bar like this, the build bar, and put them into a similar menu. So I wouldn't expect too much of that for the first release, or rather for the 3.5 release. We've got the Galactic Conquest selection menu because it's something that's a bit more disconnected from other game mechanics. It took a lot of work to get running, and it's going to be harder for us to not use it at this point. You'll probably also see some of the Empire of the Hand stuff working off of a new menu in-game, but you'll still be using the build bar for other things. But these are the kind of things that we can hopefully transfer over into a separate menu that is hopefully more easy for people to understand, gets information across more clearly, and is a bit more flexible for us to use. There are some limitations to what you can do with some of this stuff. We are technically taking over buttons from other purposes. Luckily, there are a lot of buttons that just aren't used by the game, which gives us a good bit of leeway. But there is a hard limit of how many fully moddable buttons we have to work with. And typically those are used for the background frame rather than the buttons itself. Won't get too technical here, other than to say we do have to be a little bit careful or a little bit selective with what we use all of this for. But again, just to give an example of how much you can do with these, the Galactic Conquest selection menu that I was showing you is actually running within a Galactic Conquest. So that's how flexible that can be. It's a lot easier for players, I think, to work with than having to know how to navigate a build bar for everything. But that's, again, just a quick look at one of the things we're working on for 3.5 and Thrawn's Revenge. We don't have a release date yet. We will be starting beta hopefully soon-ish. I'll be doing an Empire of the Hand preview playthrough, hopefully by the end of the month, maybe early September that'll start. But that is the main thing that we're working on, is getting the Empire of the Hand content up and running. So not super long yet. Thank you for watching. Hope you're looking forward to this and the other changes coming to the mods, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, everyone.